Everyone. Hi everyone, my name is Laura Salzano. I am specialized in European Union law and European Union migration law. I am currently pursuing a PhD in constitutional law at the University of Barcelona, where I am conducting research in border control, migration law, and human rights. I am also working as a legal researcher for the Catalan NGO, Stop Mare Mortum, and welcome everyone to the second day of the conference From the Sea to the City. We are going to tackle today a very hot topic, namely EU and Frontex responsibility and the human rights violation. It's a topic that has been discussed a lot in the last months, thanks to the findings of investigative journalists, to whom I am very thankful, and that finally, thanks to them, got the deserved attention from the institutional world. As we know, Frontex in particular has been recently investigated by the EU Ombudsman, but also the OLAF, the EU Watchdog, and the European Parliament. We have four incredible guests to discuss it with today. I'd like to introduce you all to Ms. Vera De Leia Otku, investigative journalist specialized in public access of documentation and transparency. Ms. Sara Creta, investigative journalist herself, expert in Italian and European cooperation with Libya. Berenice Godin, Sea-Watch policy advisor and strategic litigator. And Bach Ballo, member of the Gabian Association in Italy. Without further ado, I would like to start this conversation with you all, starting from you, Vera. And well, in many occasions, and Frontex officials and Frontex executive director, Mr. Fabrice Leggeri, maintain that given the regulation, the legislation, their position within the European Union, they are unable to directly command the national authorities and directly have an impact on human rights at sea. Nonetheless, we have witnessed that thanks to several observers, human rights violation, and namely the right to asylum and the non-refoulement, and sometimes also right to life. This is why I would like to start by asking you, what is the finding of your work, given also your privileged point of view on that? Vera, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. So yeah, I mean, first of all, just to say that Frontex shifted from a really small agency when it was founded to now a really powerful and huge agency with also a lot of budget. And what we can see in the Central Med is kind of a new tactic from the European Union to keep people out of the European Union. Because normally it would be pretty simple. There are laws that are stating that people in distress have to be rescued, and the European Union is searching for a possibility to kind of not obey such a law. So when first Frontex was patrolling there with a lot of vessels, and since 2016 the vessels are almost gone from all the missions, and they shifted from vessels to planes. The reason is that a plane is cannot take obviously people on board. A plane is it's just possible for them to watch the Mediterranean, and with this shift it is easier for the European Union to collaborate with, for example, the Libyan Coast Guard to push back people, but Sarah will later speak more about the connection with the Libyan Coast Guard. What we did, we were kind of monitoring almost a year the plane tracks of Frontex. They're flying almost daily with 3 to 4 different planes in the central Mediterranean, and they are spotting almost daily people, and then they are they are saying that they are informing the national authorities who are responsible for rescuing these people. What they are doing is informing, they are informing the Libyan Coast Guard when these people are still in Libya, and so it's kind of that they are making themselves a legal gray zone, so that they can pull back people in this case, and kind of keep people out from the European Union. And then they are really proud in the end to kind of show that the number of people who have reached the European Union has decreased and not increased. And that's kind of the goal that they are searching for it. And that is now also changing from not only planes, so they're now going to use drones. They've started at the beginning of May to use long distance drones that are normally used in war zones, for example, in Afghanistan or Mali. And these drones are going to fly from Lampedusa in the central Mediterranean, but also in the Aegean Sea, to monitor this region and kind of help to more push and pull backs. The problem is with this that Frontex cannot be sued because they are not a vessel that it's hard to sue them. It's not that it's impossible. It's a legal gray zone and it's not that easy to kind of sue for what they are doing. If they would have vessels there and they would refuse to help people in distress, then it would be a clear case. But in this case, it is that they are just spotting people and then giving kind of this information to the national authorities who would be in charge to do that. And that kind of, gets them out of their responsibility to help people.
Yeah, thanks, Vera. Indeed, Frontex seems to be a little bit above the law, or at least they seem to feel this way, while of course no one is. And thank you also for describing this legal gray zone that we have at EU border, and also the development of the missions, since after the Italian Mare Nostrum, there was no mission mainly focused on search and rescue to actually help and save people. So thanks a lot for that. And this makes me think that when we think about indeed legal gray zones and the human rights violation, we mostly think about borders and the sea and something that is happening with the European commitment, well, in Europe, but human rights violation at border is it's not only what we are going to discuss today. We have Sara Creta with us today. As I said, she has an extensive knowledge of Italian and European cooperation with Libya. And human rights violations are often committed by third-party countries that we are helping and that are infamous for the treatment they reserve to migrants. I am obviously thinking about the camps in Libya that are places where humanity and the rule of laws completely end. She was also one of the very few people who actually entered camps and was able to write about it. And this is why I'm very happy to have her here with us today. Sara, what are the crucial aspects that you think must be conveyed and disseminated among our audience today?
Thank you, Laura, for this great introduction, and also thank you, Vera, for giving us some light on what's happening in the Central Mediterranean, because definitely in terms of communication and visibility and transparency is a black hole. I would like to share my screen with you. I would like also to show you some pictures that I took during my recent trip in Libya, but also from sources that I collected while I was on the ground in Tripoli. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yeah, can you see, right? Yeah. So I wanted to start with this picture here because I think it's very relevant to our discussion today. To think about what has been happening on the ground, especially in Libya, and the fact that this is not something new. But if we go back to the Italian cooperation with Libya and the agreement that they signed and the first mission that the European Union did in Libya, we have to go back for almost 20 years. Like the first time that they start to discuss and then they sign the first agreement and the first cooperation was back in 2002 and then 2004 with the first equipment that Italy delivered. And this, for example, is a picture that a source shared with me last March of one of the first trips that the EU did with the Libyan counterpart in the desert in order to decide how to reinforce the cooperation with Libyan Coast Guard and with the Libyan border guards in the desert. And the picture before is a picture that they took in the desert during that mission, and they brought back to Brussels in order to convince the EU Commission to basically support and give money and funding for the Libyan counterpart. So as you see here, the life of the people, it's again used and over and over again in order to convince the Europeans that they have to put money and to support the Libyan Coast Guard or the Libyan guards or the Libyan authorities in order to stop the flow of people coming to Europe. And this, I think, is also something that we should consider when we talk about this, very fine rhetoric on the importance of human rights, democracy, rule of law, that, seems to be without limit the EU willingness to embrace, dictatorship, dictatorial regimes, and help them, to reinforce not only Libya, but also in Chad or in Sudan, like other countries that have been partnering with the EU and with Libya and with the other EU countries in order, to take part in deportation flight or construction of a detention center. So again, I want to give you this, let's say, historical context, because I think it's very important to know that the first camps that were built in Libya, in Kufra and in Seba, were built thanks to the money that Italian cooperation gave to Libya at that time. And the first flight that between 2003 and 2015 brought back more than 145,000 people to their country of origin, including to Eritrea, were paid by Italian taxpayers. And this was the first step, of this big iceberg that is today this technical support, logistic support, training, and so on. So, at the time, Europe obsession was still there. So we see that nothing has changed. Basically today, the same number of resources are diverted and distorting also, the international relationship in this entire region. And also, I think this should give us further ground to think about how these resources are pushing for instability and insecurity in the region, and are also, responsible of what is going on in terms of conflict, but also if we think about Libya, the instability and the civil war have not stopped the EU to share or to channel money to militias, to other armed groups that are today in control of the territory. And for me, this is, this long-standing migration cooperation that definitely, pose a lot of challenges, not only in the life of refugees and migrants that obviously I was able to document when I was there. So, for example, here, when I was on the Coast Guard vessel last March, here you see the way that the Libyan Coast Guard basically is collecting information from the MRCC Rome and from those aerial assets that share with them coordinates, and the rudimental way that they are using to basically conduct search and rescue in their own search and rescue zone that, again, was supported and declared just with the support of the EU. But it lacks all the basic means that are needed to have a running and operational search and rescue area, including equipment. So, for example, when I was at sea in March, we only were able to use 2 vessels that were previously donated by Italy. In that moment, only the Fezzan and the Ubari were operational, but the other 4 vessels were under maintenance in Italy. When we were at sea and we were receiving coordinates in order to go and intercept the boats and bring the refugees and the migrants back to Tripoli, it was clear that we couldn't, manage the search and rescue zone at the moment. We had to leave a boat with more than 200 people adrift at sea because we couldn't take anyone more on the vessel, on the Fezzan. We were already over full with more than 200 people, and we couldn't get those people on our vessel. So we left a boat with 200 people in the middle of the sea without any, life jackets, without any kind of, support. We didn't try to understand what was their condition, if they would stay or not, for how many hours they could stay. And actually, we found out, thanks to, information that it's extremely difficult to collect and to cross-check, that boat was actually rescued 2 days later. So as you can see, this is just an example for you to understand that the operation that are conducted today by the Libyan Coast Guard are putting the life of the people in danger, not only because obviously people don't want to go back to Libya, that is a country that is a country that they are fleeing from, but also because the Libyan Coast Guard is not equipped, and no matter what training they received, they are still, lacking the basic equipment that they should have to run a search and rescue zone. So if we look, for example, at the necessity to have a running operational center to, receive information and coordinate information and coordinate assets at sea, we see that this is still and constantly done by the Italians that are running the operation on behalf of the Libyan Coast Guard from the Italian vessel that is anchored in Tripoli, inside the Tripoli base, right? So again, this is, I think for me, it's a clear example of how this cooperation and legal enterprise is run with the help and the support of the EU. And just to give you a little bit more on the work that we have been doing together with my colleague, and especially the evidences that we were looking at to try to build up with open source, with other survivors' testimony, but also with other flight and vessel tracking system, to try to understand, all the possible available record to build what we needed to have. That was a database with all the cases of interception. And these digital evidences, I think, is something that's definitely for journalists is so important, but it's so difficult to gather, because today we are at the bottom of a situation where it's impossible for us to have a transparency on what is happening in the Central Mediterranean, and all that we see, it's against public available information, and the information that we try to collect, it took us months to put this together. So we were able at the end to gather information on 94 events, attempt of crossing, that we had all the information that we needed. So date, time, coordinates, number of people involved, main assets, and so on. And even when we had this exhaustive list of attempts, we were able then to cross-check that information with Libyan Coast Guard and with the survivor. So again, I mean, this kind of work require a number of hours and hours, to be sure that the Frontex plane was flying in the direct vicinity, on the immediate vicinity, and didn't call any other asset that was at sea at the moment, and we find out that put the life of people at risk. And even more important than that, I think what we were able to find out is that there was a direct chain of communication and chain of responsibility between the Libyan Coast Guard and Frontex. So this, I think, is also something that it's very important to highlight, because in terms of the patterns, we see that the boat in distress are spotted, and then the communication take place between the European asset and the Libyan Coast Guard, and no notice is given to nearby commercial vessel or NGO vessel, despite their proximity. And we highlighted this in a situation where the life of the people was at urgent risk. And we find out that 91 people went missing, or they have drawn. So I think this clear, it's an example of how these rescue that are delayed are contributing, to a number of accidents at sea. And so again, I think we have enough evidence today to demonstrate the level of engagement and the level of direction that violate European law, they violate international law, and it also contradicts the same Frontex position, that it says that it doesn't direct intercept migrants. So I know that I'm running a bit longer, so maybe I will continue later with another part of the research that I did, mainly on the war crime and the situation in the detention camps.
Thank you, Sara. Thank you. And I'm always so impressed with receiving the findings of your investigation and with your experience too. You touched upon so many crucial points, such as transparency and the relations with Libya, and the fact that there is a clear communication and a direct command, and how also the public money is spent. And I think it's also very important to visualize the externalization of border control. When we speak about externalizing border control, it's so important to see that Libya does not have the basic need to actually carry out search and rescue operations, and NGOs often tell us that they also don't have the willingness to do so, even if they had the means. Speaking of it, our next guest is Berenice Godin. For me, it's a true honor to have you here as a representative of the NGO Sea Watch, whose work at sea is invaluable on many levels. I am obviously thinking of the help offered to those in need at sea, but also all the monitoring activity that you carry out through your aerial assets. Basically, also due to the lack of transparency that Sara just spoke about, I think you are probably the only non-public actor who actually know what happens in the Mediterranean Sea, since basically no one else has a clear idea. And would you like to offer us a clear picture of what you happen to directly witness there?
Yeah, thank you very much. And also thank you, Sara and Vera, for your very impressive input. I would like to start maybe by recording what the UN Special Rapporteur on the human rights of migrants recently said, that, I quote, member states should put an end to pushback practices, respectfully the prohibition of collective expulsion, and uphold the principle of non-refoulement. And the report that was published concerns the current situation in the Central Mediterranean. And what we observe is that the European coastal states have deserted the Mediterranean. The only assets available are NGOs, which are mainly blocked at ports, or merchant vessels whose crew are neither equipped nor trained for rescue operations. In fact, instead of actively engaging in rescue operations as bound by law, European member states delegate their duty to render assistance to the so-called Libyan Coast Guard. who are, as already mentioned, massively equipped, trained, and financed by the European Union and European member states, such as Italy and Malta, through memorandum of understanding. And the aim is really clear: no one should cross the Mediterranean and reach Europe. But Libya is, according to international maritime law and human rights law, not a place of safety. And this delegation practice perpetuates a never-ending cycle of abuse where people are being brought back to the hands of the ones they are running away from. And there are also multiple recorded cases of use of violence on the people on the move or civil actors by the so-called Coast Guard. So the authorities of European member states are not the only one relying on the so-called Coast Guard, but Frontex embodies these European isolation policies. And in the central Mediterranean, this means being only operational with several aircraft and, as also already mentioned, one drone, and being actively complicit in illegal pushback. And I wanted now to present you some concrete situations involving Frontex that we have encountered and perfectly exemplifying the crimes of the European Coast Guard agency in the central Mediterranean. So Sea-Watch is known for conducting rescue with our vessels in the central Mediterranean, but vessels are too slow and don't provide a full overview of the current situation in the Med. And that's why we have been conducting since 2017 operations with aircraft, so first Moonbird and since 2020 Seabird. And with this, we document human rights violations in the Central Med, and especially those perpetrated by Frontex. Yeah, so I would like to share my screen. Is it working? Oh.
Well, I think it is, but I cannot see anything. But okay, now it is. Yeah.
Is it working?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. The reality is that Frontex is exclusively coordinating pushbacks of persons in distress with the so-called Coast Guard, and as was mentioned, or really constantly refuses to involve any vessels in the vicinity. The first example that I selected is on the 12th of February 2020. So the alarm phone initiative received a distress call from persons, and immediately the rescue coordination centers and us. And when Moonbird found the people, the Frontex aircraft Osprey 1 was already on site and was actually circling over the boat for about 30 minutes. And they remained really unsealed until the so-called Coast Guard, the patrol boat Fezan, intercepted the boat. And we overheard on the radio how Osprey announced Operation Complete, heading north before they flew back. And so on that day, around 50 persons were pulled back to Libya, likely facilitated by Frontex.
Of the distress case, I think, is the most neutral one to get them to say an answer, you know?
Yeah.
Tripoli Osprey 1, operations complete in your area, routing northbound, maintaining 3,000 feet.
Okay, so much to that.
Yep. So, as I said, so this is one kind of typical example that we have where we arrive on scene and Frontex is already there circling, and the so-called Coast Guard patrol surprisingly arrive. And 1 year later, on the 22nd of January 2020, so this year, again, alarm phone was called by around 80 persons and alerted the authorities and us, and a first aircraft, so NGO aircraft Colibri 2 of pilot volunteer spotted the people. And meanwhile, we actually observed that, so our ground crew observed that the track of Frontex aircraft Osprey 3, which was also orbiting over the people, they left, as you can see on this screenshot, they left the scene, head to Tripoli, and then back to the people, where we actually assumed that they were guiding the so-called Coast Guard patrol boat to the people, because this is not a typical track, I would say, of normal behavior of the Frontex. And then we, of course, so we arrived, we found the people, and the so-called Coast Guard were only 1 nautical mile away, so really near the people, and we spotted, so yes, the interception, and Osprey 3, so the Frontex aircraft had already left scene. And also on the 7th of February, also this year, while our aircraft was flying, our ground crew also saw that Frontex was orbiting. Was orbiting. And again, when we arrived on scene, we found an empty boat, so burning, and in the near vicinity, this patrol boat of the so-called Coast Guard with around 30 persons on deck. And again, this is really how Frontex work. It's what we observe with our operations. And as Vera said, more recently, Frontex started operating with a drone from Malta. And with the capacity then they are able to fly much more longer, and the modus operandi is quite the same. The drone flies, and the so-called Coast Guard intercepts the people and pull them back to Libya in violation of international law. And we also already saw one of this situation on the 13th of June. So to summarize, disrespecting human rights by denying rescue and pushing people in distress back to a country at war has become an institutionalized practice. In April, 130 persons went missing due to a lack of deployment of SAR assets, despite 4 private vessels looking for the people. And this year alone, according to the IOM, more than 690 persons died. So the Central Mediterranean has become effectively a deserted cemetery. And the European Union and European member states must stop cooperating with so-called Coast Guard and comply with international maritime and human rights law. They must launch a search and rescue program. But the European Coast Guard agency Frontex has no mandate to conduct search and rescue operations, but the mandate to protect European borders. But what this actually means in the Mediterranean is that Frontex's aim is to prevent in any way persons from escaping and fleeing to the EU by exclusively cooperating with the so-called Coast Guard. Border protections and search and rescue operations are incompatible. To guarantee safe and legal routes and for the freedom of movement for all, Frontex should not be reformed but abolished, as requested recently by around 50 different NGOs in multiple countries with the network Abolish Frontex.
Thank you, Berenice. Thank you. Yes, I'm so happy that you mentioned the campaign to abolish Frontex. And yes, and thank you for showing this pattern in the activities of the agency, and underlining also as what they do are pushbacks, while, for example, the agency likes to call them interception, which is the fine line among which they walk when it comes to the sea border regulation. And probably that should be amended if it allows the agency to engage in such clear human rights violation. And thank you to Sea-Watch again for all the work they do. That is very dangerous, essential. They fill a European void, and they, in many occasions, are also criminalized by Italy, and that is using criminal law for instrumental reasons, as we know. Moving on now, if it is ever possible, I am particularly glad here to have Bach Mbalo, who is a representative of the Gabriel Association in Italy. Bach, you endured a very difficult trip from your hometown, and then you had the terrible experiences in Libya. and you lived yourself a shipwreck in the Mediterranean Sea, and finally you managed, after being rescued, to reach to Lampedusa and then Italy. But still, you told me that sometimes it looks like the journey has not ended yet. What's the reality in Europe for those who managed to arrive here? I think you're muted, Batch. Turn your microphone on. Yes.
Yeah, once again, I'm Batch. I will love to start from my story, because I'm also a victim of those that came to this back way. In 2016, when I think of coming to Europe to further my education, because that was my objectives, to come to Europe, and it was not possible to take the plane to reach Europe. Then I decided to come through the back way. When I arrived in Libya, Libya was a place whereby human rights violation is existing, and still now it is existing there. The European Union, or I can say in Italy, they said Libya is a safe place, which is still now I don't believe. Understand? So when I arrived in Libya, I wanted to go back to my country, because I find out that Libya is not a safe place for me. But when I gave my passport to the Libyan themselves to try and bought a plane ticket to go back to the Gambia, it was impossible, because they took my passport and the money that I gave to them, and they go away with it. Till date, I could not see that passport which I was having. Then I decided to take the boat, because it was risky for me to go back through the Sahara Desert and to go back to the Gambia. And then I decided to take the boat and come to Italy. When I get in the boat, we came up to the international water. Our ship get break because the engine was broken. It was not functioning. So we call the rescue teams. So before they come, it happens. So many things happens there, because some of them, because of how they feel in the ship, in the boat, the fearness they got in the ship. Some people died in that, because it was a very terrible journey. And when we were pushed from the Tripoli's guard coast, it was raining, and then the sea was very, very, very bad. In fact, before I say, from sea to the city, when I heard of this, I said, yeah, you said it as from sea to the city, and I call it from the frying pan to the fire. Because when people are to die in the sea, we all know how the sea is. People die in the sea. And when they are rescued, they are fortunate to be rescued in the sea, taken in the city, which is the fire. Because all these things that is happening in Africa is caused by the Europeans, and this we talk of human rights violations and this human rights, and we have laws for human rights and all such. I'll come back to that. And when I when I was, rescued, and I was brought to Lampedusa, where I stayed for 4 days, and I was brought to Agrigento. When I reached in Agrigento, they give me 7 days paper, which says I could, I should leave Italy within 7 or 30 days, which I could not do by myself because I was not having money. I was not having anything. I was just left in the street like that. And I find it very difficult to, at that present moment, to reach into my objectives. When such things happens to someone whom you know that, can't control his mind, you understand? So many things might happen to this individual. That's why I said it's from the frying pan to the fire. The city is the fire, because when migrants arrive, the way the Italian government see these migrants and the way Europeans see these migrants, it's like they will put these people in fire, because they will, the laws that they will implement in these migrants will not help the migrants. When I was thrown in the street like this, I try to meet some people so that I can able to appeal for the paper that I was given. When I appeal the paper, I become regular in Italy. Then I started following my education, which brought me to Europe. But there are so many people whom you know that when they arrive, they don't have those objectives, And the Italian constitution will put them in a place whereby most of them will become mentally. Because when you ask someone, now you are here, you are to ask asylum. When you ask asylum, they put you in a center whereby you will wait for 2, 3, 4 years. You don't know. You go to the commission. They said you have to bring a contract before we give you documents. When you go back to look for work, they will tell you, go and bring your documents before I give you work. Now, if someone is found in this limbo, I could say, what do you expect this man or this woman to do? That's why we have so many mental people here. We have so many youths that are dying, even in Europe here, without no one taking care of them. We have so many of them here. So we talk of human rights. To me, it is just a say, but no one is practicing about human rights. When Europeans went to Africa 400 years ago, they went there, they take all what belongs to Africans, bring it to Europe. Today, the youths of Africa is trying to come and do the same thing what they have done before, because Europe was poor at those days. They went to Africa and take all the resources that would have been the benefit of the African youths today. They bring it to Europe. When we are to come, we are not allowed to come. All these things are things that are violating the human rights that we are talking about. I went to the embassy to come to England because I wanted to reach England, because I was English-speaking. Gambia is an English-speaking country, but it was not possible for me. So when we said you have a right, it means it is only based to certain number of people. Blacks as how I could, identify it, blacks has no right. It is just things that they are saying, human rights, just to defend their people. That's why I don't believe all the things that they are saying. And when they say human rights, I just listen and forget about what they are talking about, because it's not something that is existing. And if it exists, it's just a number of people that are, benefiting in that that law. You understand? When we talk of freedom of movement, each and everyone has the right. When I have right, I would have not used this back way. I know it's a very dangerous place. I would have not used that place if I was having a right to come to Europe. I don't have that right. That's why I took the back way to come to Europe. All these are things that the international laws, those that are put in these international laws, these are things that they should value up, because it's not something that is favorable to the world, especially Africans. While Africa is the continent that make Europe today as Europe.
Thank you, Batch. Yes, I thank you. I fully agree that European member states often forget the role of colonialism in the current root causes of migration flows, and this is something that we should address more often. So thank you, and also for reminding us the absence of legal and safe pathways produce. Because you said you tried to have a visa, but you couldn't. And this is what the European visa policy is doing on people. It's forcing them to engage in terrible and almost deadly, in your case, route to try to reach Europe, which is something that could have been easily avoided if you managed to have a visa and just take a plane to reach England, as your plan initially was. And also for reminding us the dire conditions of our reception facilities and what is the welcome that we often to migrants and refugees, which is at the same time the reason why I am very happy to share this moment with you all that are listening to us from afar, and with you all, because this conference is co-organized by institutional representative. Personally, I am very proud of the role of Mr. Leoluca Orlando, the mayor of Palermo, because I am a Sicilian citizen, and I know that he has a specific sensitivity when it comes to migration. And but we definitely would and need to do more. So thank you, really. Well, now we are almost at half of the time that we have together, which is, I mean, I really would like to be more. So I will, I wanted to come back on some of the topics that were addressed before, but we didn't manage to go deeper into them. So I wanted to come back to Vera della Iautco. So you addressed the issue of transparency and how difficult it was for you. Actually, it's something that also Sara said. Indeed, she's a journalist herself. It's so difficult for you, and still your work mostly relies on access to documentation and reading the public documents, I mean the official documents of public institutions. Transparency is in general, I would say, instrumental to democracy and enforcing human rights, and also holding states and agencies like Frontex accountable, and which is also why I wanted just to seize this occasion to express my gratitude to all journalists here and out there that are protecting our democracy with their work. So thank you. And So when it comes to your work and Frontex, what is your experience with transparency in trying to access documentation to carry out your investigation?
Not a good one. Yeah, I mean, Berenice, you're also smiling already. I mean, you know it as well from an NGO side. Frontex is a really transparent agency when it's coming to the EU. What we were doing when we were publishing the Frontex files, I mean, it was doing FOI requests, so freedom of information requests, to try to get more information about with which lobbyists in the military industry they are meeting. Because Frontex published that they are having such meeting, but they didn't publish who participated in hearing myself.
Dutch, maybe. Could you turn your microphone off? So we try again, better?
Yeah. So we were Luisa, one of our team members, she was asking for this documents, and she was just doing it kind of, I mean, Luisa is obsessed with asking asking for documents and making such institutions more transparent. But she was not sure that she would get it. Because normally Frontex is refusing a lot and is saying they cannot publish anything due to security reasons. Like, for example, we wanted to have more information about their air missions and aerial surveillance missions, to find also more. It was even not possible for us to find out, to get more information about how they are doing their aerial surveillance missions and requesting any document. They're saying they can't give them out due to security reasons. But Luisa managed it to get the Frontex files, so like lobby documents from 2017 to 2019, where Frontex was meeting with the military industry, which was really important due to the reason that we kind of saw from this document what Frontex is aiming for. They are kind of using military solutions for for their way of seeing the EU's external borders and how to be acting at the EU's external borders. And I think that's really a crucial thing to do, to use these military solutions. And I think there should be a bigger debate about it. And I think the documents were laying the first ground for that. But still, there is a lot needed.
Vera, just a clarification for those who are following with us and maybe are not so familiar. What do you mean with the military solution when it comes to Frontex?
Okay, military solutions. In these documents, I mean, it was 148 documents with about everyone having 40 to 60 pages. It was military industry, for example, as I already mentioned before, Frontex is now not only using planes, but military drones that are normally used in war zones. As Berenice was saying, there is not really a difference in the mission, but we kind of have to think about how in an ethical way it is that people are sitting with a joystick in Warsaw or in Malta, I don't really know where they're sitting, but not in the plane watching these people. It's more kind of a game, and there is a screen between them, and we're kind of losing like the emotions to this person who are there in distress. And it's more, so that's one part. So they were using, there were documents about the drones and about, for example, the weapons. As the mandate of Frontex was renewed in 2019, Frontex was meeting with weapons specialized to kind of find out which weapons the new standing corps, which was also a renewal from the 2019 mandate, should use. And what we found out with these documents, Frontex is seeking for biometrics solutions for their way of securing the EU's external borders. So people will be detected, data will be collected, biometrics will be collected, that's something that should be discussed. And Frontex, these meetings they had that were not just between the military industry and Frontex themselves. It was Frontex kind of gathering EU countries, even third countries, and also universities to these meetings to kind of spread their idea of how they think the situation at the EU's external borders should be regulated.
Yeah, the role of technology and the impact it has on respect of legal obligation and violation of human rights is certainly the new challenge on legal terms at borders. And I was impressed with the way you expressed the concept just a moment ago, because you said that there was this kind of filter between the person controlling remotely the drone and in the academia, many scholars, when they describe the role of drones in the border control, they speak about dehumanizing border control. So it's more or less the same way of addressing the issue. So I can see Berenice is smiling, so maybe you have something to comment on it, to add, or maybe you have like a point of view of the Sea-Watch that you would like to offer.
No, I would just, I completely agree with everything what has been said so far, and especially about the use of drone, the fact of dehumanizing. I mean, we are speaking about people in distress spotted by engines and controlled remotely, and yeah, this is really, absurd and completely dehumanizing.
Yes, I completely agree. And well, coming a moment back to transparency, that was my question to Vera. There are many levels of lack of transparency in border control and migration. And Sara was mentioning before during her speech that it's not clear of what happened with attribution of a SAR zone to Libya back in 2008. We know that the European Union, Italy in particular, had a strong interest basically in having Libya recognize its own. And we all know that what is happening now is that, well, all the other member states have an excuse not to intervene if the SAR event is happening, is occurring in the Libyan SAR event, which is also, I mean, more than a stretch of international law, because the SAR Convention doesn't say that. But you were saying about the MRCC, the Center of Control, you were saying it's not clear what happened actually with the control. Could you come back to that for those who are not familiar also with the concept of MRCC? Could you explain that a little better for us? Thank you.
So this is also part of a transparency exercise that I did in October last year, when I've been doing some general freedom of information requests to the Italian Ministry of Interior. And in particular, my request was based on trying to understand how the EBM, that is International Border Management Fund, were used. And before filling this request, I've been trying to do some research myself to try to reconstruct which activity have been implemented by the Italian Ministry of Interior in the framework of this, border management, as so-called border management by the EU. And through the analysis that I carry out and the sources, the open sources that on the website of the state police and the Invitalia, that is a website where basically they have to publish all the tender publicly, I find out that in September 2020, they just spent 6 million out of 46 million. That was, the project budget for this international border management project. And the creation of the SAR zone, so the so-called SAR zone, and the creation of this study, that is a feasibility study that was carried out by the Italian together with the EU, was part of this 46 million. So all the activity to build this SAR and to reinforce the Libyan authorities in border management activity were part of this EBM. fund. So I try to understand myself how this money were used. And then, for example, from the activity there, I tracked that they were supplying, like boats to the Libyan police, in this case, the GACS, that is the Coastal Administration, Coastal Police. That is another branch of the Libyan Coast Guard that is under the Ministry of Interior and not under the Ministry of Defense as the Libyan Coast Guard. That they were sponsoring a Toyota Land Cruiser. In this case, nearly 2 million were used to support the creation of border police to operate in the desert. With the Toyota that were basically delivered last July in completely silent ceremony. So we have no picture or no any public activity of this ceremony, but this Toyota arrived to Libya, and the Libyan authorities are currently using this Toyota to pick up people in the desert and to bring them to new centers that have been opening last month in the desert, particularly in the town of Garian. So it's, sorry for the noise, but I live near the train station. So this Toyota Land Cruiser are recently delivered to the Libyan authority, so last July, and are being used currently by an authority that has been created under the DCIM, that is the Department for Combating Illegal Migration under the Ministry of Interior. And basically they are armed group integrated from Zintan, that is a region on the mountain in the desert, south Tripoli. And 2 centers are currently being reopened. So there were facilities that were shut down in the past. Among them, there is a Garian, are being reopened. So basically intercept people in the desert and to bring people back to those places. So this just to tell you that the EBM, the Border Management Project, has different activities that doesn't only incorporate the Libyan Coast Guard, but is a more comprehensive program that provide technical assistance and specialized consultancy service to the Department of Controlling Illegal Migration, so under the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Defense. So what is interesting here is that when I did this freedom of information, and I discovered basically that partly this money were not used, and so then I find how it's possible that the SAR zone was declared and there is no central operation center, right, to basically coordinate all operation. So they have no equipment, for example, to have NAVTEX. They have no internet equipment on board the vessels. So again, like a numbers of activity that were supposed to be delivered are still not being delivered at the moment, right?
And how do you say they can carry out their SAR operations with indeed not even the basic needs to communicate? How practically would you say this happens?
Yeah, so for this, I think there are 2 versions of the reality, and then I will conclude with the short video that I filmed on board the Fezan to clear any doubt. So as we said, Libyan doesn't have not even a fraction, of what is necessary to managing a SAR zone, which is crucial. So basically, when we see,
not just to help everyone with to us, but what would you say it's needed? What is that Italy, for example, has, and it's a precondition to actually carry out SAR activities?
Well, a central operative office, coastal radio, NAVTEX, all these are basic equipment that you should have in place to run operation, in a very coordinated manner. So if today the NAVTEX are still printed and distributed by the Italian MRCC Rome on behalf of the Libyan Coast Guards, this means that they have no means to issue any of this is NAVTEX, right? Not to mention even radio communication at sea. It's completely rudimental. Like some of the vessels that Italy delivered at the very beginning, for example, the Sabrata vessel, didn't even have communication on board. So basically, they were not even sometimes able to communicate with the people back in Tripoli when they were at sea. So, you know, you have situation where basically they were lost or they couldn't, you know, engage with the operation room, basic operation room that they have in Abu Sitta base. So I think, again, like there are, you know, this kind of two starkly different, you know, vision on what is actually happening. So from one side, Italy and the EU, they are telling us that they are investing in capacity to manage, you know, so the Libyan will be able to manage their own water and perform search and rescue activity, you know, as in any other country in the world. But then in the reality, the darker reality of this event is you see that clearly this is a fiction. This is a completely fiction where they are trying, you know, to deny responsibility, Italy and Frontex, but also Malta. And basically these interceptions are in a kind of control mode. For this, I wanted to just screen this video that I recorded on board the Fezan. And this was at the end of our mission at sea. So we spent, I said, we started at 6 o'clock in the morning. We continue all day. We brought back 2 rubber boats, so nearly 200 people. We couldn't rescue a wooden boat with 200 people on board, and we went back again at sea. When we went back at sea, we conducted 7 or 8 interceptions. And at night, it was around 9, 10 o'clock at night, we received a radio call. And now I will show you what happened.
Thank you, yes. I don't see.
Can you see?
No, I think it's the other. I can see the desktop, and not the page where the video is showing.
Okay, let me see. What about now?
Maybe try again, because it's like I can again see what I was seeing before. Well, in the meanwhile, I can just tell to Batch that Andreas Meyer is telling us that it's very important to listen to you. So I wanted just to convey this message. And then when Sarah is ready, we can just go. Okay.
Boat in distress is motor tanker St. George. St. George, do you read? St. George, who are you calling? Yes, I'm calling the boat in distress, about 9 miles from dead ahead of me. I'm proceeding to investigate as per MRCC Malta instruction, over. But they don't have a radio to call you. What do you need? Do you need any further information? Who is this, please, over? European aircraft in the area. Copy that, European aircraft in the area. This motor tanker St. George. May I know your call sign? Sorry, sir. At the moment, I cannot disclose any information, please.
500 متر بينك وبينك ما يجيش البابور.
Libyan Coast Guard, St. George.
Please, now starboard or right migration board?
Yes, we already sighted the boat, your Coast Guard, and you're proceeding to our vessel, St. George.
استوعبناها كيف قاعدين نتعاملوا معاه احنا كيف قاعدين نناوروا يا بديع
نستناك تعطيني معلومه اعطيني الموقع الصحيح وقداش في شخص وشنو مواصفات المصادر بالله عليك صوروا لي بالله
تمام 100%.
هاي بشوية بشوية، واحدة واحدة. هاي هاي Depuis qu'on est sorti, ça fait 2 jours. Ni manger, ni rien. Nous sommes là. Si les Libyens nous récupèrent encore, ils vont nous frapper, on nous met en prison encore. On est là comme ça, mais tout le monde est peur. Tout le monde est peur totalement. Nous sommes peur quoi? Tout le monde est peur comme ça.
So this night on board, this night on board of the Fezzan, basically we intercepted this small rubber boat with 12 people, and the information came directly via an aerial asset. And this information was basically given to Malta, to a cargo vessel that was in the facility, to stand by and to wait for the Libyan Coast Guard to arrive. We were in the middle of the Maltese SAR zone, and we pick up these people, and then we brought them back to Tripoli against their will. So again, I mean, this is for me, it's clear. I have nothing to add more. I think the way that this operation are run, and the lack of capacity, because the fact that they don't have an operation room in Tripoli to run this operation, they need a aerial asset. Without this aerial asset, the European aerial asset, they will not be able to carry out this interception at sea. Yeah.
Thank you, Clara. Indeed, the video spoke for itself. Thanks a lot. Unfortunately, our time is running out, but before leaving all of you, well, first of all, I wanted to read that Andreas Meyer is reminding us that Frontex is acting against Frontex and bringing it before court, and we ask for support. So all the evidence that you through your work managed to collect, it will be very welcomed for them and very useful. The email is andreas.meyer@frontlex.eu, and thanks, of course. And also I wanted to read a question from Mark Tilly to Sarah and Vera about the technical challenges to access documentation. So, for example, do you have to know about specific documents, is asking, I am reading, in the first place in order to request access? So I think it is more of a technical question about the way to build the requests.
Maybe I can briefly speak about my experience with the Italian Ministry of Interior, but of course, we challenged that decision with the first court in Rome, and the court in Rome didn't want to give us the documents, so now we are challenging again the decision. So I don't know what will happen at the end, but at the very beginning of my freedom of information request, I asked a list of the document. So I can share with you the information request that I did. Basically, I don't ask about specific document, because at the end I don't know which document do they have, but I wanted to know which document they have, so I want to have a list of the document. But even in this case, the Italian Ministry of Interior didn't want to share with me any information. And what is interesting in the Italian case, I think, is the Article 6 that we are challenging. So basically, Article 5. So basically, it says that any interest party has the right to access information that is essential to the public. But basically, what the Italian Ministry of Interior says, and I think this is very opaque and leaves room for perplexity on how the EU funds are used in Libya, is not just the silence on this subject, but also the fact that they don't seem to be in harmony with the principle of transparency and the right to information, especially because they say that they cannot give us this information because this will compromise their relationship with Libya, you know, and these are military operations. Although these are EU funds that shouldn't be used for military operation, though, so this is also very opaque. So that's why, yeah, we want to challenge this. So I hope that the court case will go further, and hopefully they will share with us more in the future.
Yes, we are all waiting for it. And Vera, the question was also addressed to you. So if you have something to add, please, the floor is yours.
I can just say, like, for what we did for the, like what Luisa did for the Frontex files, it's just to request any presentation, minutes, lists, summary concerning anything to the Frontex published already before that the meetings, and so we requested, like Luisa requested that, but you can have a look. I think it's everything public, how that's going to be requested, and Luisa is now focusing just on Frontex. So if anybody has any questions to that, you can go to Frag den Staat, and I think Luisa is publishing everything there, what and how she requested.
Great, thank you.
And maybe, Laura, I just would like to add shortly that, so as I was saying before, the 46 million, and then, you know, there is a second phase of the project. Again, other 46 million that is again for support of integrated border management, and this include the provision of 3 search and rescue vessels, and also the plan to develop a mobile rescue control center, they call it, to support activity of the Libyan Coast Guard, and they say search and rescue operation. So again, you know, this very rudimental maritime search and rescue control center that is based in Tripoli will be now shipped to a kind of container solution. And this is going to be part of a 15 million EU project that is the second batch of funds that are part of the EBM, so the International Border Management. The new coordination center that is planned by the Italian Ministry of Interior, so that's why I did the FOIA request to the Italian Ministry of Interior, is going to be functional and be based inside the container. So they are working on it.
Thank you, Sarah, also for opening up a little bit such technical and complex issues to all those who are not directly working with these topics, and so can be a little bit confused while approaching them. Well, unfortunately, our time is over, and I am sincerely very sorry because I could keep on asking questions to you for hours and hours, and so hopefully there will be more events in which we can shed lights on such opaque topics, and also give the floor to professionals like you from both the investigative journalists and the humanitarian actors, and which I want to repeat it, very thankful, and thank you also to Batch for joining us and offering us your experience, and which and opening up your life to us, and also thank you to all who contributed to organize this event, and to everyone who listened to us and stayed with us up until now. Thank you.
Thanks.